Greetings and welcome to this week's episode of the Pixel Crashers Podcast, a podcast where we discuss our thoughts on gaming news. I am Angelus de Mortiel, together with Kev the Gamer.
For the love of God, turn your webcam off before you masturbate, please.
I don't even know how you do that.
Hey, major stupidity.
Well, that's a...
The conversations apparently I miss whenever I'm doing the intro and have everything muted so that I can't hear what they're saying. This is what happens. They talk about masturbating on web camera.
No, you didn't hear about the Twitch streamer?
No, what?
There was a guy on Twitch who forgot to turn his webcam off and was live streaming himself beaten off to rape
porn, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'm referencing.
Oh my!
Actually, let me see. I can probably find the picture for you.
I don't think he wants to see it.
If you do,
I mean, it doesn't even show anything.
Hey, if you do, just post it in the stream chat so that way everybody can suffer. Any case, as you guys know, here on the Pixel Crashers podcast, we discuss an intelligent perspective on gaming news, which includes fapping on your live stream. Yes,
exactly.
Intelligent
By the way,
perspective.
It is safe for work. It doesn't actually show anything.
It's
showing
safe.
him fapping. It's not safe for work.
No, it doesn't show the guy actually fapping. Like the picture I have, it just shows the guy.
So in any case, so there's been some games this week that we have played some occasionally. So Kev, what have you played this week?
A lot of games. The Division, City Skylines. What else have I played?
Well, one of those games
Ori.
is good.
That's not a nice way to talk about City Skylines.
Hey, come on now. I like City Skylines. That's a great city sim game. A hell of a lot better than what was that crappy one EA put out?
EA, I am not playing any EA games right now.
No, I'm talking about the SimCity.
Oh, SimCity?
Yeah.
SimCity, once they fixed it, was decent. Once they fixed it.
It's still really lacking on a lot of features.
Yeah,
Unlike City Skyline.
I'm not saying that it's better.
Like even after fixing everything, most people I've spoken to are veterans of like the previous games. SimCity just lacks a lot of the depth.
Oh wow!
Right,
that
does.
link actually showed up in full video on the Unified
Yeah, I
chat.
saw that.
Yeah,
I'm like, that's pretty awesome. Okay then.
But what I actually like about SimCity as somebody who was new to that genre, I felt like it was SimCity was actually approachable for someone who's never played that before. Like I could pick it up and play it really easily. So City Skylines is a lot better of a game. I'm not debating that.
Yeah.
But I felt like it was more. But I felt like SimCity, in its defense, is a lot more noob friendly.
Yeah. I can see that, because the thing is that City Skylines can get super technical, and sometimes the causes for things aren't always so obvious, and you have to kind of, like some things are logical but not spelled out for you. Like, hey, if you put that nasty polluting building upstream on your river, hey, it's going to pollute the water for your city.
I didn't get that the first time I tried it.
Yeah.
I didn't understand that, and now I realize, there's an upstream, downstream.
Yeah, it's like in real life, that's logical, that makes sense. But yeah, like, it's something that's not really spelled out for you in a sim game where you're not used to that mechanic.
On top of the fact that, it's PC, load screen, you can't read the load screen, there's not enough time.
Yeah. If it was on console and you're waiting 5 minutes on the load screen, maybe.
Oh, ouch.
So the Division, we'll talk about that one probably a little bit more in our actual segment on that, since we have a whole segment today dedicated to the Division and talking about that, since the beta was this past weekend. But yeah,
I haven't played it all.
So you played Ori and the Blind Forest finally?
Yeah, I started my Let's Play series when I was. I think I talked to you guys once about it before, the taste test where I was doing the one-off shoot.
Yeah.
So I did the first video for that last week. That was Gianna's Sister's Twisted Dreams, and the second episode that's coming out this week I recorded for is Ori and the Blind Forest.
Nice. Mm-hmm. So what do you think of Ori?
I like it. It's challenging, but it's an old school puzzle platformer.
Yep.
And it's making me appreciate the indie game scene.
Yep.
Like I tried another game. It's
Or he's not even that indie anymore.
well, no. I mean, but the style, the art style of it is something more you see with the.
It is very artistic. I love the aesthetics of the game. It's
it's great.
Me too. I love the aesthetics of it, but it feels like like a lot of the other indie games that are just really challenging, and it makes me miss that.
Yeah, unfortunately, with AAA dev, you're not going to see a whole lot of challenging. They prefer accessible.
Right. I mean, unless you get like to the Japanese games, like actually, and that's even like.
Well, I shouldn't say that because there's AAA dev that does go challenging. Like, for example, Dark Souls.
That's what I was about to bring
Dark
up.
Souls is AAA, and that definitely does not shy away from kicking your ass.
Right, and I was actually about to bring that point up because that's what I was saying. Shout out to Joe because he got me to open up to Dark Souls.
Yeah.
Dark Souls isn't even as difficult as people make it out to be.
Yeah, it's not. You have to.
It's just punishing.
You have to pay
that's what I
attention
mean.
to patterns.
Yeah,
it expects you to actually improve.
Mm-hmm.
Like it doesn't hold your hand at all.
Well, that's the funny part about when we played Dark Souls 2 also. Toward the end, I didn't feel the challenge at all. Like it felt like once it got to like a certain once it got to a certain point, it just felt like I kind of just plateaued.
Yeah,
well, co-op is also quite a bit easier.
Yeah,
well, I mean, even when I was playing like the sections by myself, and even I've gone back and played it by myself at times, and I still feel that way.
It's a game that if the moment you drop your guard is when it like even the best players, the moment you drop your guard and you take things lightly, you die.
Yep,
that's what it does. It's like if you're on your toes, you're all right. It's not that difficult if you actually stay focused. But the moment you get to thinking like, oh man, I'm just gonna run through here real quick. Boom, you're dead.
In a lot of ways, you could call Dark Souls kind of an endurance test because it more, especially for the later fights that take longer to complete, you have to maintain focus for longer and keep doing the same thing. Which sometimes a lot of people can't keep focus for that long, and it ends up punishing you severely for that.
And actually, what's funny about that too is I tried to play Bloodborne. I tried to play and I just found it way too easy.
Bloodborne is a lot easier, especially since you can spam the heals, the blood vials. I think they are.
Oh, I can spam them in Dark Souls.
Yeah.
Like when it comes to technicality and mechanics and such, I think in a lot of ways I prefer the Dark Souls series. Like where Bloodborne really shines is the aesthetic and the presentation and the story. Like I find it to be a much more interesting kind of lore than Dark Souls, even though Dark Souls was amazing too.
Careful, Dark Souls fans will eat you alive for saying that.
Oh no, a lot of them
they get pretty defensive over.
My biggest problem is, as someone who actually played the multiplayer, the PvP components of Dark Souls, Bloodborne is a great single player experience, but its PvP is just so much worse, I think, than Dark Souls 2. Like, people can say that all they want about Dark Souls being better than Dark Souls 2, but mechanically, especially in, like, the, multiplayer components of it, Dark Souls 2 is probably the best Souls game for multiplayer, in my opinion.
But, so, on our... And Ori was obviously an indie game, and it was kind of along the same... I mean, it's
published by Microsoft.
Yeah, it was published, but it was an indie dev that got, published by a major guy. It's just like that, what is that one that was on Xbox that I got for free that one time that was similar to Ori in the Biome Forest for its art style, where you played a fox with a talking sword.
I don't know that game.
Oh, Dust and Elysian
Dust.
Tale.
Yes, Dust. That, and I like the art style of Dust too. That was another indie dev that actually got published by Microsoft. So they are indie devs. It's just that essentially they come up with a great idea, and Microsoft or EA or another big publisher comes along and says, we want to keep our street cred, so we're going to publish ourselves an indie dev. EA's example is, of course, that Swedish development team that's coming up with Unravel. Which is an indie development team, but they're being published by EA. Same thing. Or
like Valiant Hearts by Ubisoft kind of thing.
Yep. Same thing. So, yeah. As far as indies, though. So Joe, have you played any new indies? Oh, wait, there's this one indie that I'm sure you were gushing
that I wanted to talk about last week, but then my damn internet went out.
Yes.
The better question is there a game that Joe plays these days that isn't an indie?
Yes.
I've been playing Prototype 2 a little bit.
Oh, okay. Because I know Joe said he's been kind of burned down on the
And
AAA
XCOM.
industry.
I've been playing XCOM.
Oh yeah, I forgot you loved that XCOM.
Yeah.
Been playing Long War mod, preparing for XCOM 2.
Yeah. So what's this game that you were gushing to talk about last week and didn't get a chance to?
Like, a lot of people have probably heard about it now, but Darkest Dungeon. So, you start off inheriting the manor estate of, your ancestor after they've passed away, the lands around it and such. And turns out your ancestor wasn't such a nice dude, trying to basically perform dark rituals and summon eldritch abominations
But that's fun.
and all kinds of crazy shit. And
That sounds
basically,
like
they died.
normal rich people stuff.
Your
I mean, I'm poor and I do that
castle
shit.
was the castle was overrun with cultists and undead. The lands around have been overtaken by like fungi or like creatures and
Fungal
like
creatures.
the Warrens, the sewer type system, underground systems beneath, are now filled with swine people, like actual pigmen. And
That is
like
not
even the
politically
cove,
correct.
Bear pig man.
because you're up on a cliffside estate.
And bear
The
pig.
cove is now overrun with eldritch fishmen, like from Cthulhu mythology. So,
Seems legit.
Yeah.
Like I said, rich people things.
Well, no, I'm
so your
telling you,
job.
I'm not rich, and you know this country. You're poor, you're rich, and I do these things. I do them.
So
I call like 4 rituals a week.
Yep.
So, your job upon inheriting the estate is to go in and reclaim relics and different like deeds and wills and portraits and busts, different parts of the estate as a resource to improve like the hamlet from where you can basically hire adventurers that you send into the dungeons. And now when you send adventurers into dungeons here, it tries to be a little bit more close to how it would actually be, forcing people to go into these horrific areas and fight the absolutely nightmarish eldritch abominations. You have the stress meter, because your heroes actually get stressed out and actually start, breaking down upon seeing the horrors, encountering the absolute like monstrosities around the estate. So, like in town, you have to upgrade like the abbey or the tavern, where you can send your heroes to go and get de-stressed during the week. And, you upgrade different skills for them. There's like 12 different classes. There's a bunch of different like types of heroes. You have stuff like, for example, there's like the one that's a leper who specializes in really heavy hitting, but has like low accuracy. And he has different like self buffs and such. And there's just a bunch of different classes. And you're expected to go and choose your party composition to kind of synergize with each other for each of the different dungeons, because each of the different areas have weaknesses and strengths. So you go and you prepare for that. You even have to pick up provisions, because you actually have to feed your adventurers while they're going through the dungeon. You have to bring torches, because the darker it gets, the more stressed out they get inside the dungeons. But the more loot you get and the more crits you get. So it actually is like this risk-reward system, whether you want to let the torches go out.
Yeah, but
This game has too much depth.
Well, no,
Way too much depth.
no. The fun thing is so Joe, why don't you tell us what happened to I think it was it Canada or the one that went to de-stress at the tavern.
There's a bunch of different touches.
Was
Like
that
your heroes
the-
can catch diseases.
Was that
Yeah.
the Twitch stream guy? Was he trying to de-stress?
Yeah, he was trying to de-stress playing Darkest Dungeon,
yeah,
and he got
so-
syphilis.
One of
from
the
the
options
internet.
at the tavern is, you can go and send your hero to the brothel to get de-stressed. And there's a chance they'll go and catch syphilis or different diseases while they're there.
Because
And the same thing, if you send your hero to gamble, your adventurer to gamble, there's a chance they'll win big and actually get you some gold. There's also the chance that they'll lose. And not only can they lose you gold, but they can lose you trinkets, which are like special items you can equip on heroes to boost their different stats. So they can go and lose that, or they can go drinking, and then each hero can actually develop little quirks over time, positive and negative quirks, that give different effects. One thing is like your adventurer can go and binge drink, and it'll be like after a particularly like bad night of drinking, it's like this hero is now resolute. It's like they'll refuse to go drinking for de-stressing anymore. And you can get stuff like a hero can see something particularly like horrendous and become like faithless, or like I think it's called witness, and it'll be they refuse to pray or flagellate for de-stressing in the
Flatulate.
town.
I
You
mean,
know,
why
like
do you keep talking about this Twitch
self-whipping.
streamer this way?
Yeah. I'm just keep going
But-
back to I think this Twitch streamer was in Darkest Dungeon too long.
Mhm.
But so the great thing about the game is that it finds so many unique and fun ways for you to torture these poor hired mercenaries.
You don't mean to torture them.
Yeah, right.
Joe doesn't need to torture them.
What, okay, Joe, then why did you name all of your characters after all of us?
Yeah, he did.
Because it makes me more attached to them. When
Yeah.
like one of
No,
those,
because
like,
then it's more fun whenever they get brutally maimed or get
it makes the
syphilis.
story more interesting when I can name them after you guys.
And now my next and final question is, and maybe chat could tell me why is Joe not Twitch streaming this?
Hashtag get Joe on Twitch.
But yeah, it's just very fun game. What's great about the game is on top of all these great mechanics, it has a great presentation. Like the art style follows a very kind of graphic novel, comic book esque aesthetic. You know, kind of like a little graphic novel or comic book.
Yeah,
You even
2D
have like
paper style. Yeah,
when you go to like having combat, you know, you actually have to position your like units. Like when you have your party composition, it isn't just selecting units that synergize with each other. You actually choose their placement and line, and then like for example, different abilities can only be used from certain points, like different positions, and can only hit certain enemies in different positions. Like your healer can only heal if they're in the back row. Like if they're in the front row, it's like they're not going to be able to heal. Same thing with like your melee unit, like your leper. You know, he hits like a truck, but a lot of his abilities can only be used from the front row. If he gets moved around, he can't do anything. He has to spend his turn trying to reposition himself. So, you know, it's another thing that adds depth to it. And what's great is when you go to attack with different units, instead of having like a full animation, they go for a kind of still image, like you know how you would see again in a graphic novel or comic book, when during an action scene you'll see them do like a pose, almost like an animation, real quick image, and it just works like that combined with.
sorry, we're in the chat. We're discussing
I see.
venereal diseases.
But yeah, there's also a narrator that they have in there. I forget the guy's name, but just amazing narration that just adds to the atmosphere of what's going on, and the writing's so good in the game too. It's just there's a lot to love about that game.
So yes, Darkest Dungeon, great game, indie game.
Oh yeah,
You pay
spent a
for
year in
it.
early access.
You have some issues, man. Anyway, so yes, Darkest Dungeon, great. Just keep Kev the leper out of the brothel.
Out of the
Oh, yeah.
whorehouse.
Monster Zero in the chat. When like the lower your light level gets, the more higher chance your heroes have of being surprised.
Light level,
Just
no,
like if
Destiny.
your light level is really high, you can surprise the enemy. When you surprise them, sometimes you know you get to attack first, no matter what your speed is. But if they surprise you, your adventures will actually get repositioned.
So
And suddenly,
speaking of
Healers
darkness,
are in the back row or in the front row. and
Yeah.
just-
well, like you know, and that of course happened to you the one time. You were like, I'm just gonna let my torch go out, you know, because I've explored this area.
There's different events can occur. There's one that I didn't even know about. I went in, you know, I'm going to play, and I'm like, I've scouted out the area because I had some good rogues with me, good scout chance, and I scout the area. It's like there's no battles in this area, so it's like I'm going to conserve my torches by letting them just kind of burn out. Maybe have a chance at better loot. Let the torches burn out, and apparently there's a rare chance that if your torches are out, you can encounter a really tough mini boss called the Shambler. No idea it could happen. I'm just sitting there with my torch out, and it's like, boom, here's this Shambler creature. And he just proceeds to wreck my shit. And it's just like...
I'm so traumatized by your mentioning of light levels and having flashbacks of the Cosmodrome.
Oh my. So as far as just to get things moving on there. So as far as have you played any other games this week other than Darkest Dungeon?
Again, I've been playing XCOM, the Long War mod, which adds in, like, instead of the 4 classes of normal XCOM enemy, within, it changes it to, like, 8. Same with
Mm-hmm.
the mech classes. There's, like, 8 classes of mech units.
Mm.
And it increases the size of your squad from, like, the normal 4 to 6 to, like, 6 to 8 now.
Mm.
And it makes a lot of different changes. Like, low cover and vanilla XCOM is kind of worthless. But in, like, Long War, it's actually all right. You can actually afford to have units in low cover and not have them be completely wrecked. But it also, like, increases the amount of aliens that can spawn in a certain area. Like, when you're going to play it randomizes a lot more the pod location, so it's harder to game.
Yeah, and,
Like,
and
knowing
it's
where
also
pods are going to show up.
you can't standardize, like it makes it a lot more challenging because you can't predict everything that's going on.
It's a lot tougher, but it's quite a bit more rewarding, and there's a lot more variety. Like, there's a lot more weapon choices instead of just having, like, all the assault rifle that you can put on your rookie. It's like you have SMG, assault carbine, you have an assault rifle, you have a battle rifle, you have a marksman's rifle that all the different classes can use. Like, the scout can use the marksman's rifle, which is basically a sniper rifle, but it actually allows them to move around a little bit more.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have quite the range of a sniper, doesn't have quite the damage. But they basically become a more mobile version of the sniper.
Yeah.
Or you can run around with a shotgun.
The assault's still great.
Can you quick scope in this game?
Maybe with Marksman's rifle, but your range gets shit at close quarters.
No quick scope is trash.
You can even go and craft sawed-off shotguns, which you can equip as a secondary on certain classes that has, like, no range. But if you're at close enough range, like 1 or 2 tiles away, and you're, like, flanking an alien, you're pretty much guaranteed you're just going to instantly kill them.
Can you teabag them afterward?
I mean, you can stand over their corpse and cover if you want to.
That's not teabagging. Game's trash. Confirmed.
So, any other games you play there?
I've been trying a little bit of Prototype too. I'm only like a couple hours in. And
it's the steamroll game. By the end of it, you're just so horribly overpowered.
I'm only a couple hours in, but so far it's like, this is Prototype. It's like, it feels like they made some changes, but overall it feels really similar to the first game.
It did not feel like it changed a whole lot from the first game.
It changed some of how the leveling's done, but that's it. It's otherwise, very similar to the first game. I mean, it's still fun, though. Mm-hmm. Still enjoyable to go on rampages.
I've had that game for 2 years. I've had both of them, and I still haven't played them. I've had them on Steam for like 2 years.
I played the original on Xbox way back.
I'm sorry.
But it was a fun game.
Yeah. But let's go ahead and kind of roll the game of note that I've played this week with the first story of the night, which is The Division. Yes. So The Division, I got to play in the beta, so was Kev. Joe didn't care.
Yes, sir.
So I was playing a bunch of it, and got through all the story content. Did some of the Dark Zone play. Apparently, there's hackers in there, according to someone told Kev that.
Jeremy sent me the link on Reddit about people hacking the game or cheating the game.
I didn't notice it particularly, but
I didn't notice it either.
But so the first thing I will note, anybody who happens to have played previous Tom Clancy third-person shooters, namely Ghost Recon, because, that's the way it's always worked. Ghost Recon was the third-person shooter. Rainbow Six was the first-person shooter, right? So anybody who's played previous Ghost Recon titles kind of is familiar with a lot of the control scheme that they did, because it's largely been, oh yeah, I forgot. I'll get to that, Zyphon. The problem I have is that the control scheme feels really clunky, especially coming from Phantoms, which Phantoms had a really refined cover-based mechanic to it. It was actually really good. It was one of the best. The main thing that I notice is missing is the crouch/prone/slide button. The button where when you're sprinting and you hit it, it would make you slide, like into cover or something to that effect, or into prone if you didn't have cover to go into. If you were standing still and you hit it, you would crouch. If you held it down for a second or two, it would make you go into prone. And that's completely missing from this game. And about the only thing that really kind of goes for making any kind of smooth transition is the button to make you go into cover. If you spot like the little context pop out for another spot of cover, you can hold down that cover button to transition from one cover to another.
Space.
So it's pretty much space bar, shoot at some enemies, spot another cover, space bar, click, space bar, click. I'm using 2 damn buttons to play the entire game.
Don't forget F.
Barely. That was that.
Well, F for looting, though the loot isn't very good.
Well, it's also the beta. I tried to discount a lot of things that could be like nixed out of the full game. You know, like the loot being crummy or whatever. That could be low level, could be beta stuff. But the missing crouch prone slide button, that's not a beta issue. That's never going to make it into the game, I guarantee you. It's too late in the development stage. That would have had to happen way back when in the early stages of it, and it's not there. Yeah. I'm like, come on, it's all the, like, Ubisoft owns all of that. They couldn't take some of the what they did for Ghost Recon Phantoms and throw it in here.
I think
here's why I didn't play Division.
It's probably an oversight.
Yeah,
I feel like
I didn't care too much about Division. It's like, it's not because it's AAA. Because it's Ubisoft.
I will note that the 650 Ti boost was able to run the game, albeit at a mixture of medium and low settings. Just for people that are curious.
That's fine, though. That's a good port.
Yeah.
What kind of frame rates were you getting?
I was getting 60.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah. Like, now, there was a couple times it dropped to 45. I think it was... what was it? There was one of the... Oh yeah, whenever I first came into the dark zone, there was like some fire effects, and then there was a helicopter overhead shining lights on stuff, and that actually dropped my frame rates down to 45 just because there was more than the usual piecemeal enemies randomly. That was about it that I noticed. The fun of it, as Zyphon noted in the chat there, so when I first loaded up the game, you know, I'm just exploring, just wandering around, not doing anything, come up to my first enemy encounter. And I'm like, oh yeah, bust in the cover. Pop out, aim, click the mouse. Nothing happens. I'm like, go back down into cover. Click the mouse. He puts the gun up over the cover, but doesn't shoot. He just holds it up there. I'm like, what?
Yeah, the AI in this game is incredibly stupid.
No, I'm talking about my character.
Oh, shit, like, your character.
Like, he wasn't fire. It's like he had the safety on. You know, he would act like I clicked the mouse. He would hold the gun up, and he would do nothing.
I wonder if the glitch similar to what, like, I had a glitch at one point where I couldn't even ADS.
Yeah, I could ADS during this, but yeah,
I had to Alt and Enter. I found that fix on Reddit and it fixed it.
Yeah, I actually, whenever I closed the game and reopened it, problem was fixed. But, regardless, you know, like I said, the game isn't horrible. I'm a little iffy on the whole bullet sponginess of the boss enemies and the stupidness of the AI. It's like, I understand some of the guys are going to be kind of dumb, but it's like, hey, I've got an assault rifle. You have a baseball bat. Are you going to just charge straight at me?
Like an idiot?
Like an idiot? Or are you going to maybe like duck behind cover, try to be all sneaky and get around behind me so you can just pop up and instantly be behind me swinging it? And it's like, again, that's not something that's a beta thing. That's
not a beta thing.
That's developed early on in the process, developing the context for the AI commands. Poorly done. Like, honestly, like, as stupid as the AI oftentimes was from, like, Gears of War had such better AI.
I'm gonna say it like this: like, this game reminds me quite a bit of The Last of Us. Just it's more of a cover shooter than I think The Last of Us was.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is as much as people talk about how dumb the AI are in The Last of Us, they're worse in The Division.
Yeah, it's like, essentially that
was my biggest issue with The Last of Us 2.
Yeah,
I thought it was a really fun game, great story.
I thought the gameplay was the real downside there. Like, the story was fine, it was great, but like, there was so much just sit behind cover, shoot dudes. It's like the stealth sections with the, you know, zombies in The Last of Us, pretty great.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just like there's so many moments where it was like chest high walls everywhere, and it's like dudes, and it's like
Well, the thing is,
I mean, that's Mass Effect 2.
yeah, well, here's my thing is that, like, at least in Mass Effect 2, they, and there was,
there's more variety.
there
to
was,
the dudes.
actually the AI was, was smart in a lot of ways, in sly way. You didn't even notice it. Like,
Yeah.
for example, the fact that Phantoms would use Nemesises as a decoy.
Oh yeah, Mass Effect.
Like
2,
it would
especially the
sit there like a phantom would like hide behind cover right next to a right next to a nemesis, wait for you to go after that nemesis, get up close, and then be flanking you and just gut you. Like I've had that happen so many times. Like there was some dumb AI moments like the engineers.
Oh yeah.
Joe and I with those engineers.
The only problem I had with the engineers was the fact that they would have like 80 turrets up.
They made them dumb.
No,
Like
no.
BioWare went
It's not
and
the
later
turrets.
on patched them. The engineers, when they launched, would sit in cover and try to stay away from you. BioWare went and were like, we don't have enough enemies trying to rush the players. Let's make the engineers run up with their pistols and just shoot the ground.
No, the
next
best
to you.
part, yeah, they shoot the
Like
ground
if you're in
next to you,
cover,
like-
just sitting there, and an engineer comes up to you, he'll get point blank and look at you, and he'll hold his pistol and just aim at the ground next to your feet, and you'll see him shooting.
What is
and
this,
it's just
Call of
hitting
Duty?
the ground next to you.
Yes.
And it's just like
No,
what are you
sorry,
doing?
it's not Call of Duty. It's Mass Effect 3.
No, I'm saying Call of
multiplayer.
Duty is the only thing where you can get away with shooting someone in the toe and getting the kill.
No. This is the Cerberus engineers from.
Oh, I know what you mean. It was sarcasm.
Yeah, it's just like, God, how can you be that dumb? But that was the joke. It's like, hey, we've got another Superman engineer on our group. He just running beeline right
You would
for
see
you.
hordes of them too. You'd look over and there's like 4 or 5 in a conga line coming towards you. These engineers.
They just run up into my claymore.
What's going on here?
Like that, but that was not intended that way. That's because they tried to do something with an AI that wasn't designed for it. Overall, though, the AI was really smart in Mass Effect in the way that the units would try to utilize the other
only that.
units.
Well, I felt that way, especially in 3. That's why I said in 2. Because in 2, especially the way the cover system was set up, they didn't try to flank you.
You know what though?
Occasionally,
Certain units would.
Yeah.
But also, like, even though it was a lot of cover shooting, you had your different powers in your different classes, and that added a lot more variety.
Mhm.
In The Last of Us, it was just like, I
You were
got
Joel.
a gun here, and it's like,
You get a bow and arrow, that's probably the most variety you're going to get.
yeah. Again,
Yeah.
the stealth sections were fun.
Yeah, I think The Last of Us was a great game, but when people said it was the best game of the generation,
Yeah, that was
I don't think it has enough variety to be considered
if
the best
people
game.
didn't overhype it, I would probably like The Last of Us, but because you have all these people who were like, best game experience ever, best game of all time, I'm just like, guys, come on.
I don't
They've
even
had
think it's Naughty Dog's
issues.
best game, let alone the best game ever. Naughty Dog's best game, in my opinion, is Uncharted 2.
Crash Bandicoot.
Crash is cool, but I think
Drop
Uncharted
the
2 is a lot
mic.
better.
We're done.
Nope, Uncharted 2.
I saw this picture the other day of Crash Bandicoot, and it was like I think Zyphon might have shared it with me, maybe not, I can't remember, but it was essentially like a rework of Crash Bandicoot, game cover, and it was more or less like what was it called? What was the doctor's name from Crash Bandicoot? Whatever it was, and it was like the return of the meth addict, and show Crash Bandicoot looking all like drugged out, and there was a sign that says "meth ahead."
Yeah, I saw that.
I was
Wow.
like, yep, that about sums it up. This guy who spends all day spinning around in circles and eating random fruit that's floating in the air.
Sounds like Taz.
But in any case, though, yeah, there's a lot of fundamental problems that I see with the way the Division's been laid out. It honestly feels like just straight up like it was designed to be competition for Destiny. And they really tried to do nothing more than Destiny other than
See, I feel
write
like
a
it's a
story.
better game. I feel like it's a better game than Destiny.
I
Maybe
do
it's
feel like
because
it's
of the
better
story.
than Destiny mainly because they didn't fucking ignore the PC. Let's be honest. Come
That
on.
game would have tanked on Destiny. Would have tanked on PC.
No,
Let's be honest.
you know what? No, not because here's the thing: is that you have a ton of MMOs. There's like a huge crowd space on PC for MMOs. People love new styles of MMOs, and that's what that game was. It was kind of a new flavor of an MMO.
Not really. There are other games that have done that before.
I
Yeah.
can't think of any FPS MMOs.
I can't.
They're
I
out
can't.
there.
I've seen maybe a couple. Most of them are third person. But the thing is you combine Halo's kind of smooth game engine firing mechanics, which Destiny used a lot of. With that, people would have played a lot of it. It would have actually done well on PC if Bungie hadn't just gave the middle finger to PC players, because they're probably like Ubisoft. They think that PC players are all hackers and pirates.
See,
We'll get to that
Ubisoft,
later in the podcast.
Ubisoft was funny about that though, because they said that, and then 6 months later said, "Oh, but a quarter of our sales are PC players."
Yep, they ate their word. That's what that is.
So what it really is they needed somebody to support them because Xbox is like 10% of their customer base.
Yeah. Well, like the thing is that with the Division, that this seems like Ubisoft is desperately trying to grab some of that customer base, and I think that it'll probably do well on PC, decently well. To be frankly honest, even though it probably won't have any sort of good multiplayer in it, I myself am probably going to wait for the new Ghost Recon game that'll come out, because that'll have the kind of open world Ghost Recon flavor that I was hoping for from the Division, which the Division seems to be lacking.
Yeah, the Division to me, it reminds me, like you said, a little bit of Destiny, a little bit of The Last of Us, with that kind of Mass Effect kind of cover system.
Yeah.
A lot of people compare it to Gears cover system, but I honestly think Mass Effect had a better cover system.
No, the thing is it's actually very similar to the Ghost Recon Future Soldier or Phantom's cover system. In the kind of, there's a certain method that you have to it. In some ways, it's a little better. Like I love the ADS versus non-ADS firing over cover. Where you can do the little blind fire where you just hold your gun up over the cover and kind of spray blindly at the enemy, versus if you go ADS, you pop up your whole body out of cover to aim at the enemy. That felt intuitive. That felt right. But just that crouch prone slide thing, come on. That one just killed me. Like, I don't know. Anyway, so let's go ahead and get moved on to our first story here in full force. So with the Vision, as we kind of, at least 66% of us got to do the beta, one of the things that was very noticeable that people quickly pointed out about the Division, and this one actually I will give full kudos for, the console variants of the Division have an inordinately complex amount of graphical settings for console games. Usually with consoles, you usually don't get any graphical settings at all.
You get brightness. And that's
Brightness,
about it.
yeah,
It's
brightness.
always been one of my complaints.
Yeah.
They have this little. It's almost like an anti-aliasing slider.
Yeah, and
I tried it. I tried it on the Xbox One today. It actually makes a pretty decent difference. It's like going from FXAA to MSAA2.
yeah, and now do you guys? My question posed to you guys: do you think this could be a kind of a start, or a smart move to get console gamers more control over their experience, and also kind of, I guess, give them a more equitable experience where, like, for example, graphical fidelity versus frames per second, you kind of can get a little bit of both out of it. You can find your balance in there. You guys think that's something that that they should be putting more effort on in games in general?
Not on console, no.
I believe they should, even on console. It's like, Kev, I know your argument is like, most people are like, I want it nice and simple, but it's like, I think people would appreciate having, like, even if it's a real simple option right in their options menu, which was like, turn down resolution, but boost frame rate,
Yep.
No, that's not my argument. My argument is more so, even though I don't believe this is the case anymore, people want the belief system that they're on a level playing field. And if you have a smoother resolution, it is a little easier to see people from far away, a little bit. If you have a higher frame rate, you're going to see them a little bit faster than that.
or
But
maybe
then
only do it in single player games.
maybe, but and I was going to say, but to counter that argument, scuff controllers, people playing COD on monitors, sound whoring. Not everybody has those things on console either.
Oh, okay. I want to throw this out there. In what way would playing COD on a monitor benefit?
If you're playing on a high refresh or a high response monitor with a 1 millisecond monitor versus a 20 millisecond television.
Okay, But what about the actual refreshment rate of the monitor would actually be beneficial?
It's not the refresh rate; it's the how
You're
fast the
talking about
light
just the
switches over.
response time?
Yeah, just the actual response time itself.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, basically, like by time you're ADS and looking at them, they're just seeing you come on the screen, kind of thing.
Yeah. And that's, by the way, we're talking about COD
Still,
cheaters. You
that
know,
seems like such a flimsy excuse not to do it. Like, one of my biggest
Yeah, it
things
is.
about PC since I've moved to it is, like, I just love having the options. It's like, I
Right.
want to be able to customize
there's so
my
many games
experience.
that don't do it well, though.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, and I'm not saying that it's not the best best reason, but I'm saying that that is the comfort space that a lot of console players have, is that belief that everybody has the identical specs, the identical hardware, the identical options. Of course, it's a fallacy because again, headsets on consoles, not everyone has one. I don't have a headset on.
Well, then just, again, do it for single-player games, then,
Yeah.
if that's really such an issue.
I mean, you can, but
See,
I don't think it's that big.
It's like, I feel like people would appreciate being told, hey, you have the option to
Yeah.
choose how you want to play.
I'm going to say that giving people more choice is never a bad thing. Like, for example, here would be my scenario, is you throw out a new game. You have, for, say, Xbox, just for example, or PS4, doesn't matter. And it has an optimized default graphical setting, a preset that will run the best mix of resolution, graphical fidelity, and frame rates. It'll kind of balance them all together where you have a nice mix of all three. But a player can then optionally go in, shunt down some of the graphical fidelity, maybe if they want to push some higher frames out. Say the game comes out and they balance it at 30 frames per second and, moderately high graphical fidelity. And I want to shunt down that fidelity to get 60 frames.
Yeah.
Or I want to, shunt down that 30 frames to a very cinematic 24 frames.
30 is cinematic enough.
No, 24 frames is technically the cinematic frame rate. That's
30
what,
feels.
that's
30
what
feels
movies
cinematic.
use.
Cinematic,
Hey,
man.
30 feels very cinematic.
I know,
Cinematic.
but the point is that you want to shunt down your frame rate to get more graphical fidelity, or vice versa.
Isn't that what developers are already doing on console? I mean, let's be honest. Like when I'm looking at like some of these textures, like on the PC versus console version of the game, most of the time the texture quality is ideal. It's like
you're talking about if the PC port isn't completely crap.
Well, I'm talking about because if one thing you're going to get on PC, you're generally going to get graphics, if nothing else.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I'm saying. Like comparing like my 970 to my Xbox One, when you look like the textures like right up close to each other, they're almost neck and neck. But then you see that the draw distances are off, the shadows are off, the lighting is shit. The environmental textures might be ass on the console compared to the PC in that respect. What I would love for them to do is instead, give us 60 frames on the console and make it maybe equivalent to like medium or high textures, which still looks really good, but it gives you good performance on a console.
Yeah.
But they're not going to do that because they're trying to make the consoles look like a PC, and it doesn't have the horsepower to do that. And of course, provided that like you said, the developer doesn't just shit on the PC version.
Yep. I don't know. I would like to see more.
Give me just a second. My dogs are banging on the door.
Look at
Bite
this.
him! Bite him!
Look at this. Anyway, so yeah, I don't know. I kind of like the idea of it, and I think that is what they're trying to do. Is they're trying to at least appeal to people to get more people interested. Because if they can get more people interested in this thing, that may make them look better by some strange.
Bigger dog was trying to chew on the smaller dog.
I mean, I would love to for the console players to get there.
Hashtag dog problems.
When I said don't do it, I was trying to put myself like in the mindset of like a console player who didn't know better.
Mm-hmm.
And in that respect, I was like, I can understand where they're coming from there, even though I don't necessarily feel that way. I'm never going to argue against choices for those who know better.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I can definitely agree with that.
But the problem is, a lot of the console players don't know better.
Yep. And now we have a fourth member joining the podcast. Oh, nope, he's gone. He heard what we were talking about, and he was like, Psh, I don't want to talk about that.
He's hiding in here.
Dog. Sorry,
Big
Travis.
dog doesn't chew on him.
Yep.
Dog master race.
But
I like both.
in any case, let's go ahead and get moving on to our second story then. since we're just cruising right along. I think we covered about all we can of Division. I'll get bored if I talk about it too much more. So EA opted to host their own event instead of actually going to E3 like they have for the past decade, which was kind of an unexpected event. But I guess my question is, what are the potential good and the bad things that could come from them choosing to do this? Because obviously EA, they host one of the biggest venues at E3 typically, like huge amount of space.
The thing is it was pointed out to me that the event's like a day before E3, and it's super close to E3.
Oh no, it is.
So
just like across
for all
the street.
intents and purposes, like it ends up being that it almost feels like it's still part of E3, even though it is its own separate thing.
Like what Nintendo does with the directs.
Because it's like if they did it on another date, like how BlizzCon, Blizzard has their con like way different time. They do a completely different thing.
Yeah, BlizzCon's like in September.
Well, I
See,
think
now if EA tried something like that, it would have been more impactful. But I believe with what they're doing here, it almost just feels like it's still part of E3, really. Even though it's not.
What I like about it is, like Sean Stone said in the chat too, it's open to the public.
Oh, yeah.
But so that way you don't have to worry about it. Because remember, E3 is a trade show for investors.
E3 is not for us. As much as people get excited for it and hyped, it's like E3 is not for us.
No, so this is great for the consumer in that respect. And since they have their own space, they can do a lot more with it. I think Nintendo, as much as people talked about Nintendo for doing their directs during E3, I think it was a very forward-thinking idea. Something that Nintendo should be praised about, that now they're not going to get forgotten about. And if this one goes really smooth with EA, everyone's going to praise EA for it. Now, remember, Nintendo was doing it first. Just not on site.
I'm hesitant to praise Nintendo for anything. Sorry.
I think they're a little disconnected. I love that they're still trying to be forward thinking.
Yeah, I can see that. Well, the thing that I say is...
That is my one thing. Do they charge for access to the EA show?
I do not believe so. I believe it's free.
No, I'm pretty certain it's open to the public. But the thing is they're also scheduling interviews still, because they're going to be there through E3. So, like, if people want to interview them, like, news publications or whatever, they'll still be there. But the thing is, this is kind of the view I saw of it. The good on there is it allows EA to kind of have their own space and gear their presentation the way they want to, because
they do have control of a lot of IPs.
Yeah, so they do have a lot of potential space they could use, and really, when you're renting out E3 space, one of the downsides you run into with those is that you have to pretty much pick and choose which one of your IPs gets the forefront. Which ones get displayed there, because you just don't have room for their whole portfolio. They've got a huge portfolio.
Yeah, EA has a huge catalog of games.
Yeah, so if you were looking at it that way, it does give them the potential to be able to showcase games that otherwise might not have gotten media attention, like especially some more, because obviously probably one of the big titles they will hopefully be talking about this year will be Mass Effect Andromeda, because that's obviously going to be one of their bigger titles. They also have a Titanfall 2, and they also have the new Battlefield that's all in the works.
I think those are going to be their 3 games.
Well, of course there's going to be another Battlefield. If there's going to be another Call of Duty, of course there's going to be another Battlefield. That's a given. I don't roll my eyes anymore. I kind of expect it at this point.
Yeah, well, I think also too, when you look at what they're doing at E3, those have to be their 3 highlight games. Like, it's a Titanfall 2, Battlefield 5, which they already said it's going to come at the end of this year, and then Andromeda.
Yeah, and Andromeda, I'm not expecting it to come out this year.
They said they were saying it would, but now there's a report saying it's going to come out like early next year.
No, they were saying that those 3 games would come out within by the first quarter of next year. In other words, they could come out anytime between.
Can I just say how annoying it is when publishers decide to announce a game super, super, super early and then don't give you any coverage of it until like a year later? It's like, why not just wait until it's closer?
A year later, they announced Mass Effect Andromeda before Mass Effect 3 came out. So yeah,
Like,
there's gonna be
let's
another
take
Mass
a look at
Effect.
Fallout 4. As much, no matter what my gripes with it, I will give Bethesda credit to announcing the game only like 5 months before release.
Yeah.
It's like, thank you, Bethesda. You didn't waste our fucking time, sitting there being like, get hyped, everyone, for our game that's coming out in 2 fucking years.
Well, the
Right.
thing is that I think one of the reasons why they wanted to do it is because it was just essentially a teaser to kind of, they wanted to hype up a show, which then they proceeded to not talk about Mass Effect at all. If you remember, it was just that little teaser video at last year's E3. I'm pretty certain it was E3. And then they did literally talk nothing else about it. And then they had the farewell video on N7 Day. I think that was on N7 Day.
Yeah, it was on N7 Day this year. But I wish they wouldn't have like said anything about it at all. Think about like if they would have came out like at the VGAs this year, VGAs 2016, with the E3 trailer that they showed last year, and said coming out in April. I want you to drop the mic.
Yeah.
That's the end of the show.
Yeah. It's
Think about how much hype that would have had Fallout 4 level hype.
Yeah, and I think the fact that they have covered it so little has also downplayed a lot of hype on the game. Which, now, one thing I will say, for the love of fucking God, don't be like Ubisoft and show us some gorgeous, like, amazing setup like fucking The Division, delay the game twice, and then come out with something that's obviously not nearly as good.
BioWare doesn't have a tendency to do that.
No.
Yeah, BioWare is very realistic. Like, and I've said this a million times. Like, BioWare, even though I wasn't crazy about Inquisition. Like, I liked it. It was my game of the year for 2014, but it wasn't, my favorite BioWare game.
You gave Inquisition Game of the Year?
For me, for me and my personal, yeah.
Ooh. All right. Okay.
Listen,
I based most of my YouTube channel off of that, and I wouldn't even have given it the Game of the Year in 2014.
I thought 2014 was honestly kind of a lackluster year and part of it. I really can't think of much else that I liked anywhere near as much of that game. Maybe South Park Stick of Truth, The Walking Dead. I can't think of much else.
I can't even remember what came out in 2014. That was too long ago. It felt like decades ago.
I just found Inquisition's villains were so badly.
Yeah,
come on, Corey Fish was
and the
amazing.
gameplay.
He was
the gameplay
so
was
one-dimensional. It was almost comical.
I did enjoy
just the
the
quest
gameplay.
design. The gameplay was good. The quest design.
Yeah, I
Quest
think
design and the villains just
the
ruined
worst
it for
thing
me.
they could have done for the gameplay was make it open world.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you saw that with the DLC because you saw they're like, oh, we fucked up, and the DLC was all pretty linear.
Yep.
And the DLC for it because of that was really
too
good.
much. It was too much of a
Grind.
It's an MMO, but single player.
It's just
like-
the thing is
They
it's
tried to
sad.
copy Skyrim, and they said they were saying a lot about Skyrim when they were promoting the game. So it doesn't surprise me that they went that route.
I was so disappointed because when they were first showing some of the really early development with like the rolling in system in there and everything, I was like, oh my goodness, they're going to use like Dark Souls influenced combat.
Oh
It's
God,
like,
and no, don't even get me started on fucking combat roll.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck that stupid bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, you have 4 fucking ability slots in multiplayer, and since you don't have a built-in dodge mechanic of any kind, you have to use one of those 4 precious
It's a
slots
fucking
on a dodge
power.
mechanic. Like,
Well, you want to
it-
dodge
fuck
roll?
that.
It's a fucking power. It's like, what?
It is one of those points where we can blame the consoles for that. I don't know why we blame consoles, but I feel
no,
like we should blame
like
the
honestly, what does the A button on an Xbox controller do in the multiplayer? Open doors.
consoles. Actually, when I think about it, Mass Effect 3 had a roll mechanic, so
Yeah,
Yes,
Mass
yes, it did.
can't blame the consoles anymore.
Although that was one of the complaints of Mass Effect multiplayer was the one button to rule them all.
Yep.
It's like, hey, I want to go into
Space, all
cover.
the
No,
things.
I want to revive this guy. No, I want to go into cover. Make up
Ace.
your damn mind.
A space X, all the things.
Yes. But yeah, but now here's the thing. So I've talked about the good stuff. It allows them to show off more of their portfolio to investors, that sort of thing. Get some light shined on smaller titles. But one of the bad things I can see potentially coming out of this is if, EA, who has a giant portfolio, says, you know what, we want to step out of here. We want to break out on our own. We're going to have our own E3 right down the street. And then Activision's like, you know what, that's a good idea. We're going to do that too. We're going to break off.
Bringing up when I was
Joe,
talking with
Joe,
Kev.
yeah, we were talking about this before.
Yeah.
Joe was saying,
Is
show
the
fatigue.
idea that if everyone decides to join in on this, and then we get saturated, like
Right.
Well, it's not just that.
burnout.
Here's
Conference burnout is real. I've heard from people. Like,
well, no, I'm aware of that. I'm talking about if they all just picked the same week as E3, and then they all did their own unique things right around where E3
see,
would
I don't
be.
think they all would.
No, they wouldn't. But here, if they just did that, to save the conference burnout argument, if they did that, you know, where they all just literally picked their own building around E3, but they all the big names hopped out of there, one of two things would happen to E3. Booth rentals and ticket prices to get in would skyrocket to the point where neither small developers nor average people could get in to see them, which would just completely destroy a lot of indies trying to get their name out there to investors. The other possibility is that because they're like E3 is having no traffic now with the lack of the big three or the big five or whatever you want to call it, all the big name developers, they just decide they want to shut down largely the video game section of E3 because there's more to E3 than video games, although that's the majority of it now. So if they shut down all the video games of it, that would kill a lot of investment opportunities for small developers trying to get their idea out there.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of my concern of this.
Mm.
Will Ubisoft and Activision actually follow suit?
I can see Ubisoft doing it next.
Actually,
Actually, Activision too, because Activision really don't give.
that's one of the things I'm saying. Ubisoft, honestly, even though they're part of the big three, the triumvirate of gaming, you have Activision, Ubisoft, and EA. Honestly, Ubisoft does not have nearly the portfolio of current IPs as Activision and EA do. Activision and EA have their toes in everything.
Right, but that's even a problem too because EA has so many that they have trouble balancing them all.
Yeah,
and Activision is just Call of Duty.
And then, well, Activision does do a lot of stuff. Keep in mind, Activision also is merged with Blizzard now.
Oh yeah, well yeah. And
yeah, so they have all of that too. So it's Call of Duty
shit, it
and
just started
World of
pouring over here.
Warcraft.
I can hear it through my headphones just now. Sorry to interrupt, but like I just hear this against my window. Holy crap.
Joe, it's someone spraying your house with a fire hose. We all know it doesn't rain there.
Mm-hmm.
Don't even
this
try
house
to
is on fire.
Just crazy.
Yeah.
I heard
Lack
through
of
the
moisture.
headphones, man. Damn.
But yeah, so that's kind of my points on the good and the bad of it. You know,
I think Joe brought up a good point too when we were off air. He was saying, you don't want to have show fatigue because you think about it, we have like Paris Game Show, E3, PlayStation Experience, the Nintendo Directs. Now we have this show EA is doing. Don't let Activision, Ubisoft, and
people get burned out of conferences.
Yeah, Bethesda. Everybody starts doing it. Yeah, you're gonna get burned out.
Show up to all of them.
Well, the thing is that you also got to realize you also have the PAX shows.
Yeah, you can't forget about PAX. That was the one I was.
You've got PAX because you've got PAX Prime,